Kummituksia, Finnish word for ghost, came to me as I was re-watching the 1982 film, The Entity. Written by Frank DeFelitta, novel of the same name, and directed by Sidney J. Furie, The Entity is the fictional version based on the semi-famous case of Doris Bither in 1974. Doris, a single mother of four, claimed to have been attacked and viciously raped by an invisible entity or entities on multiple occasions. Parapsychologist students at UCLA observed, witnessed several paranormal events, and agreed to study the case. The movie is the fictional account of the real-life events. Both wiki pages will be linked at the end of the blog. Spoilers ahead. So if you are not wanting to have this crazy story and awesomely terrifying horror flick spoiled, you may want to stop reading and go find it. If you really like being freaked out watching a horror movie, then you should totally see the movie and decide for yourself. Towards the climax of the film, the parapsychologists plan to trap the entity in liquid helium at minus 473 degrees below zero. In the confines of the story, anything frozen at this temperature would shatter at the faintest touch. Do ghosts have mass? We can make assumptions or hypothetical concepts based on the answer one believes. For the purposes of this blog, we will say yes to this. If the entity has mass, then we can assume that it exists in this reality, in this universe. If this is, in fact, what is going on here, then the entity must abide by the laws of physics in the form of energy, mass, and matter. All three of these are a law of conservation, which states, energy, mass, and matter cannot be created nor destroyed, but may be changed from one form to another. The total energy of an isolated system remains constant or is conserved within a given frame of reference. What we seek is to determine if this entity has mass. If it, in fact, this is the case, then we should be able to freeze it, verify its objective existence, and prove that it isn't just a psychic projection, but rather an independent force from some other level of reality that has never been isolated. Richard Brestoff as Gene Craft, The Entity, 1982. There isn't a whole lot of data out there in the scientific community to answer this question, whether or not ghosts are real and have actual measurable mass in our current perspective of the universe and reality as a whole. When you Google the question, the response Google gives is a mixed quantum bag of many assorted rabbit holes one could spend months looking into, and I am sure some of you have. At some point, over the past 25 years, data has been shared on the internet. I spent the last 2 or 3 months looking at different written, visual content related to ghosts. There are so many different types. Sure, I saw a lot of crackpot websites and data out there, but I also saw a lot of well-thought-out and visually aesthetic websites that had pretty good breakdowns on spiderwebbing the subject of ghosts to a much deeper subject to dive into. We never actually find out what the entity actually is and what its motivations actually are. My own interpretation of this entity is a force of nature. It has no solid state of matter, but yet it does at the subatomic level. For it to interact with the environment or interact with a person, physically making contact, yeah, you can bet your ass it has mass. Providing that, this is an entirely different thing. Nothing I am presenting here is considered a fact. One of my favorite quotes from Star Trek was Star Trek VI, The Undiscovered Country. Spock, once you eliminate the impossible, whatever remains, no matter how improbable, must be the truth. Arthur Conan Doyle. This quote was made famous in Sherlock Holmes. With that said, I trust that process till something better comes along that can not only shed better light on the flow of information on the subject, but also discoverability. When the science gets to a point where it can prove something to be true or prove a previously believed truth to be false, then I will accept that as truth, but not before. I understand in 2022 the flow of truth doesn't flow due to how the media now portrays its data as fact or false, but that isn't how I decide a thing is true or not. What I believe the entity or any entities can be suggested as a being of pure energy that also has the attributes of consciousness. Few fictionally based movies touch on it, but every once in a while something comes out that puts a different twist or spin on a concept, be it real or fictional. In 2016, a little-known film came out, starring Aaron Eckhart, as a scientist that can enter the subconscious mind of the possessed. In the film, demonic possession and exorcists are still ran by the church, but use science to understand and treat the possession when all the church's methods fail in some advanced, special cases. In the film, they treat demonic possession and demons as a pure energy life form built with ions of energy and in a form that isn't immediately assumed to be a form of life on the surface. They call it a parasite. Interesting that when you strip all the religious undertones out of the definition, that we are left with real-world concepts, like a parasite. Emily Jackson as Riley, C. Each of us is like a Wi-Fi hotspot, and our brains give off an invisible field of energy. You see this cloud right here? Picture, video of a cloud of electrons representing the doctor's and the possessed patient's brain waves. Some people call this an aura or a soul, but really what it is just a cluster of unique ions, and each of us has our own frequency. So this is Dr. Ember's, and this is Cameron's. You see the black streaks in Cameron's? That's the parasite, being, ghost, demon, entity. If a victim is weak, it can hook right into their frequency. Carice Van Houten as Lindsay, Cameron's mother, Oh, God, Incarnate, 2016. Written by Ronnie Christensen, directed by Brad Payton. Oh, God is right. We have been leaning towards redefining life in our popular culture, TV, film, books, video games, and other mythos for the last decade or so. But the best ideas, at least to me, come from these older movies. Rarely do I see something in popular culture that is new, outside the box, with how they define things like consciousness, life, matter, existence. What used to be the spirit of a dead, alive human has turned into aliens, demons, interdimensional beings, or entities. Do we still look at the devil or Satan from our religions in these iterations? Sure, but I do not believe it to be as dominant as it used to be when humans discovered how very tiny we are on this very large, infinitely large canvas we call everything, the universe. If we cannot prove aliens, or at the very least post memes about it, not being aliens but it's aliens, then people will draw inspiration from somewhere else, perhaps their fears? Is it so far a stretch to imagine another intelligent being occupying the same reality but in a different form? Look at another example in popular media culture, American Gods. The deities, beings, entities, when you get a few insights from the show of the very beginning perspective of these beings, all said the same thing, which they just came into being from humanity's worship, attention towards them. In our current understanding of science, this could be from superposition in quantum mechanics. Schrödinger's cat paradox experiment in quantum mechanics is a thought experiment that illustrates a paradox of quantum superposition. In the thought experiment, a hypothetical cat may be considered simultaneously both alive and dead as a result of its fate being linked to a random subatomic event that may or may not occur. Basically, when we go and check to see if the cat is alive or dead is when we find out which state the cat actually is in. It is merely our looking to see the state or measuring the state that dictates the state. By us looking at the state is either alive or dead, but not both at the same time as it is before we put perception on it. The experiment is attempting to say that perception alone has an influence on the state of the cat in reality. To explain a being, entity, ghost, demon is from this point of view, and how this works we will dig into the realm of sacred geometry. Without creating a brand new wiki page on the subject, sacred geometry is often referred to as the architecture of the universe. Essentially, it is the study of the spiritual meaning of the embedded real-world information to certain geometric shapes, the 5 Platonic universal shapes, and certain geometric proportions. It is associated with the belief that a god, any god, is the geometer of the world. This embedded information within sacred geometry can be applied to the forms, numbers, and patterns seen throughout the natural world. Everything, and I mean everything and anything in the universe, is geometric. Universe, in all its different translations, means all of something or everything. This is probably the only actual fact I will present in this hypothetical argument. This also includes creation, the flower of life, the seed of life, or the genesis pattern are the building blocks to consciousness. They are the geometric creation pattern of everything in the universe. Again, extremely hypothetical here, but what if a life form came before humans achieved consciousness, but this life form is pure spirit energy? It doesn't yet have flesh and or organic material matter to evolve from. Pretend this ball of energy is in the void between voids. It would know nothing. From its point of view, it might as well be a 2D reality, flat. It has no point of reference whatsoever. It's just spirit floating in a void. No shape, no nothing, just spirit. So at some point this proto-consciousness begins to attempt to expand this point of view. It stretches out this perception as far as it can reach or influence in all directions without moving, which ends up being a sphere, but still sees itself as a straight line in a flat 2D environment. It has yet to reach an information system that provides depth, 3D. However, now it has an awareness around itself in 360 degrees. This proto-consciousness now moves to the very edge of this awareness and creates another circle. From its point of view, the edge is the same distance from the center in all directions. At this point in the expansion process, the vesica piscis is created, and from this shape, this beginning process of pattern creation and recognition, we begin to gain some real data about this consciousness, having actual tangibles about width, proportion, depth, the square roots of 2, 3, and 5, infinite numbers, geometric information about light, the seed of life, the genesis pattern. All this information can be found embedded inside vesica piscis. This is real. This is a fact. The vesica piscis is a mathematical shape formed by the intersection of two circles with the same radius, intersecting with the edge of one circle lined up at the center of the joining circle. This process repeats over and over at exactly one radius away from the previous circle, and every iteration there is more information available about this awareness. After 3 spheres are made, you get the Holy Trinity. After some more expanding, the first complete image arises, and in this process creates the seed of life. God saw everything that he had made, and indeed, it was very good. And there was evening, and there was morning, the 6th day. The book of Genesis, chapter 1, 131. The seed of life has 6 circles within it. Upon completion of the next image, or iteration into creating the flower of life, we get the egg of life. This is the first image that can be explained in 3 dimensions in a multitude of ways. It is comprised of 13 embedded circles which reappear to depict oneness. If you connect all their centers with straight lines, you get a cube. It is also the image of a morphogenetic structure of the creation of your body. It is the image of what happens at the microscopic level of cell division to create life. The generalized image of the flower of life is always built the same way, with the same number of circles exactly one radius away from the previous circle until 19 are made. Over the course of history, controlling factions, the few that ruled over the many, wanted to keep the full image and the information it holds a secret from the many. The pattern that the flower of life is built upon is infinite. It can go on and on forever, but humanity had always stopped it at 19. If you continue adding circles past the original flower of life configuration, you get the fruit of life. It is called the fruit because it bears the fruit of all knowledge, or everything, universum. From this perspective, everything we know, need to know, want to know, and will know all comes from this shape. From the fruit of life, we get the flower of life, which contains the egg of life, which contains the vesica piscis and all the information about each iteration which is contained within it. The more the image expands to the fruit of life, the more depth and complexity the consciousness becomes. The more information it absorbs, it expands its consciousness even more. From the fruit of life, if you draw straight lines from each of the center points of the 13 circles to connect to one another, you get the image of Metatron's cube. Metatron's cube includes the 5 Platonic solids: tetrahedron, cube, octahedron, icosahedron, dodecahedron, hidden inside, symbolizing all geometric patterns found throughout the universe. These shapes are important because they are the only 5 known to have each face the same size. All edges are the same length. The entire shape has only one angle. All points touch the edge of the circle perfectly. All these shapes have their own levels of complexity and information each shape holds within it. What sacred geometry attempts to discern is, what if consciousness came before the universe was able to support life in its current form? We humans have a habit of only imagining intelligent life in terms of walking, talking bodies made of matter. Does life, intelligent life, consciousness at all require these things to exist? If we can answer that question, we would have made a large leap in gaining knowledge about the universe, about existence. If we accept that consciousness can come from something that isn't built upon carbon and proteins, organic matter, then we can start to formulate an opinion or an assumption about what the deities, beings, entities from American gods, and the entity could be. We go back to incarnate and the entity, parasite, being, ghost, demon, entity, and now we can theorize about what, how, when, why these things are. What? A life form that has achieved consciousness by the geometric process. Shapes tend to want to be perfect. They are always striving for that perfection, yet they never get there. But after every iteration, it gains more data and is able to expand its consciousness even further. It gets a little bit closer each time but never reaches phi. How? Completely hypothetical. This life form has the ability to match, hack, invade, take control of the frequency of an individual human's spirit energy, brain waves, soul, as a form of energy, and consciousness, or however one would like to define this process. This foreign energy consciousness bubble, or ECB, takes control of the carbon and proteins, organic matter, portion of that life, the body. When millions, perhaps billions of years old, who knows how long this life form, a life form, or all of them as a species, have been floating in the void before it began the process of expanding its consciousness. Have they been here since the life on the planet began to form? Have they been here since man began to imagine and dream of its own creation? If we draw more inspiration from American gods, these beings base their own image from our imagination, dreams, and worship. Like a liar believing their own lie is fact. Why? The motivations might be simple. Food. We go back to draw inspiration from the Bible and fictional horror. The incubus, male representation, and the succubus, female representation, are demons, entities, being, spirit energy that seeks to draw life from humans in the form of leeching off their sexual energy during intercourse. The incubi or succubi, plural spellings, literally have sexual intercourse with humans in order to feed off their life force. You can look at this as a form of vampirism. The 1976 Colin Wilson written novel, The Space Vampires, later adapted to the 1985 Tobe Hooper directed film, Life Force. The vampires, incubi, succubi are the remnants of a race of intergalactic space aliens that are energy vampires, rather than the familiar Earth vampires that drink blood of mammals, organic matter, as sustenance and change into bats. They consume the life force by seducing living beings with sexual energy. Though the aliens initially appear to be humanoid bat-like creatures, they are revealed to be insubstantial energy beings from a higher dimension and are able to appear humanoid from invading the imagination of humans. As we expand our definition of this potential life form, we can now add energy vampire to our pool of terms to describe what the entity is. We now have a nice list growing of descriptive terms that we can relate to in some form or another: being, entity, ghost, demon, parasite, alien, energy being, vampire, incubus, succubus, the Holy Trinity, God, God of religion, God, the universe, God, sacred geometry, spirit. In many popular demon possession stories, the demon possesses a human, so that the demon may experience reality from existing in our reality point of view. The demon wants to feel. It wants to breathe oxygen. It wants to experience pain and pleasure, to live as we do. In doing so, this being literally sucks the life force dry till the possessed body crumbles and can no longer sustain life. The entity needs to feed to survive, like all creatures that exist in our reality, but what it feeds on is the energy that makes up our consciousness. It feeds off our dark desires and our fears. It feeds on the energies of our imaginations and our imagination's ability to believe that such a thing may exist. The more we feed into the delusion, the more the delusion appears real. In this state, the delusion isn't a figment of the imagination, it is the imagination reaching out through the void, tasting mankind's perception and seeing a plentiful stock of food. Albert Einstein believed in spirit energy. Probably not to the depths I am presenting here, but he did have a grounded belief structure about energy-based consciousness not needing organic matter to be whole. A recent Google search turned up nearly 8 million results suggesting a link between ghosts and Einstein's work covering the conservation of energy. This assertion is repeated by many top experts in the field. For example, ghost researcher John Kachuba, in his book Ghost Hunters, 2007, New Page Books, writes, Einstein proved that all the energy of the universe is constant and that it can neither be created nor destroyed. So what happens to that energy when we die? If it cannot be destroyed, it must then, according to Dr. Einstein, be transformed into another form of energy. What is that new energy? Could we call that new creation a ghost? Can this energy be quantifiable to be translated into zeros and ones? If so, then could our perception, our soul, be copied digitally? Or even more mind-blowing, what if ECBs can hack into your memory and see the zeros and ones of memories and copy those memories or impressions of a person onto itself, becoming something of that person in a sense? What if we can take all your behaviors on, say, the internet or just Google, all your searches, everything you ever typed into the search engine and create an interactive personality based around that? They have done this before in science-fictional pop culture. Look up the Battlestar Galactica reimagined prequel show, Caprica. Here the teenage daughter of the leading AI researcher dies, and he attempts to recreate her intellect from all her internet history. What they get in the show was the very first Cylon, the very first artificial intelligence from their point of view. When you watch the show, you get a very weird vibe from this. You have a brand new AI-supported life form, but it's 100% digital. It doesn't exist outside of the digital world, but yet it has memories, a personality in which it cannot directly relate to or understand. It's not a person, nor does it think like a person, but it has all these memories, behavioral patterns, and tendencies that are human-based. When I poked around looking for real ghost stories, I found many accounts like the classic scenes you'd expect from pop culture. What I have always tended to believe is you can't see the ghost, but you know it's there. You have this extrasensory perception, ESP, feeling that something is there. Messing with the things you see is one of the ways it attempts to hack your brain. By messing with your senses. So how do physicists and astronomers get away with claiming the existence of cosmic ghosts, dark matter, and dark energy, when they would probably roll their eyes at descriptions of the more terrestrial haunted house kind? The answer is data, its prevalence, and its stability. According to the first law of thermodynamics, also known as law of conservation of energy, states that energy can neither be created nor destroyed. Energy can only be transferred or changed from one form to another. I have quoted this a few times now, but it is very important for us to understand how physics and gathering information embedded in Metatron's cube, the 5 platonic shapes, helps to explain how these dots are connected. So, where does our energy really go or transition into when we pass on from this living life? Has our energy transferred or transformed over periods of time, making it plausible why a small percentage of the world remembers a past life or now perhaps an alternate one? Energy is the basis for everything we use in our daily lives. Tools, vehicles, machinery, anomalous equipment, and electricity, just to name a few. It is truly everywhere. That's how anomalous researchers measure potential spiritual activity, based on the means of energy transferring equipment that expands the electromagnetic field to make it possible for spiritual entities to create a response or an action. Old vacuum tube TVs. When changing the channel, one could see, really quickly, in that instance, a little static interference. That is the microwave background radiation left over after the Big Bang. If we can detect that, or that radiation can be detected in that format, then why can't other forms of energy also hack that signal or be hacked from that signal? They do. We all call this white noise. If you took all of the imaginable tones that a human can hear and combine them together, you would have white noise. Entities have been able to hack this signal in some instances over the decades to make contact. We call this the electronic voice phenomenon, EVP. EVP leans heavily on science, perceptual psychology, and pseudoscience. All three do not play very well together, but I thought I would make mention of it. See link at the end of the blog. What I am posing here is, why couldn't it be at all fathomable that these entities actually have real self-awareness about the universe, or are they absorbing it from our minds, our imagination, our dreams, our beliefs, and our fears? I have mentioned several science fiction, horror, fiction, non-fiction stories here. Each of them are radically different in plot, character development, antagonist, origins, and attributes. Some of these are in the form of energy with no matter, and some of them could be living, breathing creatures. The Entity, 1982. A poltergeist torments a family via sexual assault upon the mother. Demonic possession, incubus attack. Star Trek VI, The Undiscovered Country, 1991. Anything is possible once all the technical challenges that make a thing impossible have been removed from the equation, making said thing from impossible to possible. Incarnate, 2016. Demonic possession by means of energy transition. American Gods, 2017. Deities, beings, entities gain consciousness by mortal human beings' belief in them. The Space Vampires, 1976, and Life Force, 1985. Beings made of pure energy that feeds on the life energies of organically living and conscious beings by seduction and sexual intercourse, incubi, succubi attributes. Ghost Hunters, 2007, quotes and suggests Albert Einstein's belief that supernatural entities could be a form of energy and if so must abide by the laws of physics. Caprica, 2010. Creating consciousness digitally from the transition of data into energy and information systems into binary and converted in such a way an independent thinking system is able to expand its consciousness on its own. AI, sacred geometry. The reason why this is so interesting is because if you look at popular culture things like art, TV, film, mythology, science, faith, religion, we begin to see a divergence with our definitions of being, entity, ghost, demon, parasite, alien, energy, vampire, incubus, succubus, the Holy Trinity, God, gods of religion, God, the universe, God, sacred geometry, spirit, artificial intelligence, man-made, artificial intelligence, exteroception, outside human perception, and spirit. Is it so hard to imagine that consciousness can exist outside our perception and general knowledge understanding of what consciousness is and what it derives from, originally? That was what this blog was all about. To open the floodgates of the imagination and attempt to make things that do not make sense. Make sense? Things in our reality that seem or are impossible are only in that state because we, as a species, have yet to be able to remove the technical challenges that make those concepts impossible and impractical, possible and achievable. We only have surface-level understanding of the knowledge and information presented in the fruit of life. All the information and data is there. We just have roadblocks in our perception, technical challenges, that are keeping us in the dark and the void from fully understanding that information system. By definition, a void, in relation to the universe, is a completely empty space. If the universe is everything, then a void would be the extreme opposite of that. But now we have two definitions for void. 1. A completely empty space that resides in our current universe. 2. The opposite of universe or everything. Number 2 cannot exist inside our universe, as there is no such thing as a true void in our universe. Nothing is never actually nothing. Space isn't actually empty. It is full of all sorts of things we cannot quantify as existing or not in our current understanding of reality. We can only view the universe in 3D, 4D if you count the time construct as a dimension. We can measure the universe in a variety of different spectrums from math, to geometry, to frequencies of light. We have learned by only a mere fraction of a fraction of a fraction all the information embedded in the fruit of life. There is still so much to rediscover. I say rediscover because at some point in human history we had a better relationship with this data, and over the last few thousand years our overlords of mankind have attempted to hide, distort, and change its historical importance to the human race. No problem can be solved from the same level of consciousness that created it. The important thing is not to stop questioning. Curiosity has its own reason for existing. One cannot help but be in awe when he contemplates the mysteries of eternity, of life, of the marvelous structure of reality. It is enough if one tries merely to comprehend a little of this mystery every day. Never lose a holy curiosity. A human being is a part of the whole called by us universe, a part limited in time and space. He experiences himself, his thoughts and feeling as something separated from the rest, a kind of optical delusion of his consciousness. This delusion is a kind of prison for us, restricting us to our personal desires and to affection for a few persons nearest to us. Our task must be to free ourselves from this prison by widening our circle of compassion to embrace all living creatures and the whole of nature in its beauty. Albert Einstein. Kummituksia. Finnish word for ghost. By David Angelo Mineo. February 27, 2022. 4,881 words.